announces News on the March. Legendary was Fort Drakeboro, where Sir Francis Drake established his American outpost and where the great Cornelius Coote founded Duckburg. Equally legendary is the modern owner of that site and most of the thriving metropolis that has sprung up around it, the richest man in the world and first citizen of Duckburg, Scrooge McDuck. Famed in local legend is the origin of the McDuck fortune. The McDucks, descendants of a once noble Scottish clan, had fallen on hard times. Yet the young McDuck lad was somehow inspired to seek his fortune. At the age of 13, he signed on as a cabin boy on a cattle boat and sailed away for parts unknown. Far-flung rumors suggest this rugged youth traveled the world's wildest frontiers, mastering many skills, yet meeting failure for 2 decades. Evidence of his eventual triumph has recently been found in newspaper files of the Yukon Gold Rush. Scrooge McDuck first appeared in local history 45 years ago when he came to Calisota with his 2 sisters and built on the site of Fort Duckburg our most famous landmark, the McDuck Office Building. Few details are known of McDuck's ensuing life. His sisters, the only witnesses to his rise to riches, have long since disappeared from public life. They were last seen in this newsreel footage taken 17 years ago. The fact that McDuck has long been reclusive is confirmed in the memories of some of our oldest citizens. The last time I saw Scrooge was when I sold him all of my grandfather Cornelius Coote's land, except my farm here. No, Mum. Remember when he came and foreclosed on the chicken coop? Even his relatives know little. Distant relative by marriage and local bon vivant Gladstone Gander. No, but if I ever did meet the old boy, I'd ask to see his lucky dime, the charm that made his fortune for him. Some people need charms for luck. His closest relative and local top blower, Donald Duck, no comment, and if you quote that line about tougher than the toughies and making it square just once more, I'll blow my top. See what we mean? Suddenly, 5 years ago, the aged financier closed down his entire empire, claiming that there was no one worthy to inherit or manage his fortune. After moving to a palatial mansion uncharacteristic of his former frugal lifestyle, Scrooge McDuck ceased to be seen in public. Yet his abandoned office building on Kilmotor Hill remains a local landmark. But is it a warehouse filled with dusty ledgers, as has long been assumed? Candid talks with former employees hint otherwise. Could this edifice actually contain 3 cubic acres of cash? More on tomorrow's News on the March. That was News on the March. Welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for part 12 of our Life of Scrooge Redux. The richest duck in the world. Richest man in the world. So, this is it. This is technically the beginning of Don Rosa's Scrooge, Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck run. Technically. Technically. But anyway, this is also one of my favorites. Also, this was the first um, um, part of Life of Scrooge I read, so I was kind of crazed out about it. But anyway, let's delve into it after that whole little shadoo of News on the March. So, we find out this takes place after the events of Scrooge's debut comic, Christmas on Bear Mountain, released in 1947. And knowing that, we do sort of have to sort of play around with what's going on here. Understand the fact that, hey, Huey, Dewey, and Louie have never met Uncle Scrooge. And they asked Donald, like, well, I've only ever seen him once, and he was younger than the boys. Okay. So that's weird. Well, we remember that first meeting. Dewey asked, hey, so why did he let us spend Christmas Eve last night at his cabin? And then we got him a serious invitation to come to his mansion for dinner. He's like, look, I don't know. I really don't know. It's probably just getting senile. Then the question comes in about exactly, is the money bin full of money? And we get Donald's first impression of him. It's like, you know what? He's a cream puff, pampered sissy boy, and if he has got tons of money, he inherited every cent. So I think this tells us maybe one of two things, a couple of things. uh, Donald not only has a low opinion of Scrooge, he doesn't know much about his own family, which I think is a bit weird that Hortense wouldn't at least talk about the family itself. But I have a theory about Hortense later on that we'll go into in another video. But anyway. So they go in, they meet, they go to the mansion, they're introduced to the butler who we'll see on and off, But what's really interesting is this moment here. They go into Scrooge's room, his little chamber. He's sitting in his chair and he's having a dream. It's like, drop that knife, Sophie, and it's, what, just get out, get out. But Donald introduced himself. He's actually very nervous. You're Mr. McDuck. I was invited for dinner on Donald Duck. Like, of course. Well, I think it's time we finally met. He also implies that, he saw what happened on Bear Mountain, which he did. Like, Scrooge was actually trying to scare. It's a whole other weird story. We'll have to go into it one day. But anyway, it's time they met face to face. And so here they are. I'm your mother's brother, your uncle, Scrooge McDuck. Dun 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 dun. And one thing I want to talk about here is just how different Scrooge looks. He looks old. And yeah, duh, of course. But it's something interesting about how Rosa draws, because if you look, it's like it's the wrinkles, it's the his hands look more weathered and frail than they did before, and of course with the bags in his eyes, the wrinkles on his beak, okay, even the way that his eyelids look a bit worn and torn, and his hair, of course. All of that I think is really great, especially compared to Down. Even also compared to Down, look how shorter he is compared to Donald. Ducks are pretty much always the same height, so which means he's getting shorter in age, or it's his knees. So anyway. The boys were like, "Hey, you're our great uncle," and they're really happy to see him. And he's like, Scrooge gets a bit wet, like, I'm not used to children every time being himself. He's not used to relatives. The few he's had seem to have disappeared. This is, of course, obviously a subtle reference to the fact that Huey, Dewey, and Louie do not know where their parents are. They don't know if they're dead, if they're alive. All they know is at some point they came to live with their uncle. That's it. And of course, the boys are really happy because, hey, they have another member of the family. But Scrooge is just sort of, as soon as the hugs come in, he's like, no, no, no. Don't pretend we have anything in common. All right? I invited you here so I get the measure of you, and you only came to see how rich you'll be when I'm gone. All right? This is Scrooge almost sort of like digging into his like worst traits. All right? Now Donald, who's been pretty quiet this whole time, draws a line. He's like, "You're not gonna hit that. You're not gonna do that. All right? Everyone knows you spent most of your money in this stupid mansion." And Scrooge points out, "You have your mother's temper, all right. But I'll show you how much I have left. I'll show you youngsters and your lazy generation." He tells his butler to get him dressed, which is weird, but also showing again how old he is. We even see in the background that it seems to be a struggle just to get that jacket on him. So Donald's like, "Yeah, just humor the old man. He's eccentric." And like, "Hey, look at this trophy. Look at this picture here. Totally fake." And of course, this Will Eisner Comics Industry Award. Totally fake. Totally fake. Totally fake. Rosa felt a bit conflicted about putting that in. I'm conflicted about it because anything that implies Disney Corporation doing anything good for this comic series, to me, is nothing but a flat out lie. But anyway. We then get a little trip down the road, past all the Santas, and they're just trying to, really make some money. But Scrooge is not like them. Like they never give up trying to bum free money to give to loafers without the guts to earn their own livings. Christmas, bah, and humbug, right? Yeah, dag bah, humbug too. Donald gets on his high horse a bit. Like, those Santas are raising money for people who weren't born rich like you were. Scrooge is having none of that and saying, if you just come a little bit closer, I can just crack your skull with my walking stick. And he's like, okay, so we got to walk the rest of the way and follow me very closely because there are booby traps. And, it's a whole thing. So we go in and they see the dime. Like, okay, this is the famous Lucky Dime, the charm Uncle Scrooge used to get his fortune. Scrooge gets triggered super hard. Like, what? Lucky Dime? Who's spouting this jiggery kook? All right, what's all that rigmarole about Lucky Dime? I haven't done a video on the dime, have I? We'll do a video on the dime. Anyway, so like what everyone says, like it's a lucky dime, all right. And Screw's like, well, everyone is wrong, okay. I had that dime 20 years before I struck it rich, and when I did, it was through my own hard work. Period. The dime was inspiration to fill up the money bin. Donald makes a joke because no one believes about that money. It's like it's not possible. No one has 3 cubic acres. Also, cubic acres don't exist. But anyway, Donald makes a joke, and then the lights come on, and we see it. And now remember, it's first of all, it's beautiful. I love it. I remember not liking it before just because it's all really one color. And from the DuckTales generation, it's also one color, so I don't know what I was complaining about. But gold looks better than silver half the time, but this looks a bit more atmospheric. And I like it. I also love the the construction equipment to show how big like this actual place is. And remember, the last time we saw this was in Chapter 11, the Empire Building in Calisota, and at that point it was what, 30 feet? At this point, like it's nearly 100 feet deep. And this is where we get to one of the fundamental differences between this version of Scrooge and pretty much every other version of Scrooge. All right, Donald says he has all his money in one huge room. Like that's stupid. All right, this isn't all of it. I have assets in banks and properties all around the world. But this is the money I earned myself alone while I traveled the globe for 50 years single-handedly, discovering mines and starting businesses. Each coin in this bin has a meaning to me. Each is a souvenir, a trophy of my grit, a monument to my glory. This is a part of my money that I never spent. And that is really, really, at the end of the day, we're gonna come back here. The biggest difference between this Scrooge and, well, this Scrooge. And it's not as to say like this Scrooge isn't sentimental or have memories. He doesn't use the money as a way to show it. The money in the bin is just money in the bin. And that's true of Karl Barks's Scrooge. And I don't even think D17 Scrooge particularly cares about any of his money. At least not in an interesting way. So it's kind of it. Actually, there's a conversation to be had about how removed D17 DuckTales is from the rest of it. But we're not here to complain about D17 DuckTales. I'll, it's whatever. Anyway, this great little moment here, which actually like the one time we've seen Scrooge genuinely smile, is interrupted by Santa Claus. She's like, "Ooh, more than the 8 barrels full I remember." Now, who saw 8 barrels? We know who. But anyway. It turns out it's the Beagle Boys, or as Scrooge calls the terrible, terrible Beagle Boys. Donald has to pull it like, well, his beard's real. That is Blackheart Beagle. And, they sort of acknowledge each other. Blackheart introduces his grandsons, a whole new generation. And like, okay, so Blackheart didn't think this was a thing, like the 3 cubic acres. But it's like, you know what? I saw it on the news and I decided to go for it. They take Scrooge, they take the kids and Donald, and put him in the store and in a storeroom. And it's like, okay, all right. Scrooge puts up no fight. And you remember the last time it was Scrooge versus the Beagle Boys? That man was unstoppable. But now look at him. He's old and frail, and he says like, it's no use. I'm too old and too sick and too tired of all of it. All right, and I remember reading this like this isn't Scrooge. Who is this man? Where's the fire? Where's the spunk? Where's the drive? Where's the no? I'm getting out of here. All right, you ain't taking my money. All right. But anyway, Don's like, leave the old man alone. You're liable to give him the vapors or something. And they try to figure out a way to get out of here. Like, hey, what's in this this trunk? Like, just relics from another life. And they go through, look at all these things. Like, why are you having it? Scrooge goes, like, it's for resale. I'm no blubbering sentimentalist, not me. And Donald just sort of takes his pickaxe, and this is where it gets hilarious and where the story just starts getting bonkers fun. He's like, it's full of tools and cowboy gear, probably bought at a flea market somewhere. It's not stuff that rich old Uncle Scrooge could ever have used, and Scrooge apparently can't take the disrespect anymore. He takes the pickaxe, takes his coat off, and like, hang on, boom, breaks through the door. I'm saying in one swing. He's like, oh, there goes my hip. Like, I'd like to see you handle that, nephew. Like, where are the beagles? Like, they're loading money bags on a Santa's sleigh. It's like, oh, okay. Donald doesn't believe who's pickaxe. He's like, grab the trunk and follow me. All right. Donald's like, but you don't need this trunk. You need a telephone to call the cops. Cops. Let me tell you right now. Last time I fought the Beagle Boys, I had Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders with me, and they only got underfoot. So Donald's like, "You sure there's not supposed to be some medication?" It's like, "Just shut up and hold on." They get to a sleigh, and the horse is eyeballing Donald like, "Who the hell is this?" It's like, you know what? Donald's like, "I don't know how to drive a horse. Like, I don't doubt it, but I do. Be they hitched to horses, bullocks, dogs, or lions." And he goes in. He goes in like, "We're going in. Hey, that'll be all for now, James. Dock your pay till I get back." And as it goes through, as we cut up with the Beagle Boys, and Blocker's like, "This is kind of sad. Scrooge of the old days wasn't such a pushover. He must have lost his spirit. He just got old. Were you scared of those? Like, I wasn't scared of anybody." And then he's like, "Scrooge is coming up," and Blackheart's freaking out. "We gotta go faster. We gotta go faster. All right." He was like, "Yeah, yeah, I ain't afraid of him. I ain't afraid of him. Grandpa, he's coming up." Fred, Fred, Fred. Anyway. So this is where it gets bonkers fun. All right, Scrooge like gets back into the swing of things. All right, like, "Look, you boy, take the reins. Hand me my gold pan. I'll show you how to deal with claim jumpers. Zing, conk, crash. Oh, look at that! Look at that! Oh. Let's see here. Who's doing the worst here? I think the one. Oh, he hit that lamppost. Oh, he's. mm, Oh, I don't know who's off worse here. Oh, the one that hit the horse's ass, probably. But anyway. Is he done yet? No. Give me the boomerang. Throw the boomerang. All right, we dodged the boomerang. It's a comic boomerang. You didn't dodge anything. Comes in, hits him. All right. Blackheart's like, "Look, give me the dime. Give me the dime. I'll hold it for $1 billion ransom." He's like, "You know what? You got on your own, kids." And it goes through. Scrooge's like, "Give me my old lariat." And he's like, going through. The Beagle Boy's like, "We've lost control of this. He's an old man. How do we lose control of this?" And he goes in, and Louie goes, "I bet you Wild Bill Hickok was Uncle Scrooge's teacher, pupil." Rosa pointed out, this does not make sense. It's just a little fun joke. Also, the horse has gotten intense. The police come like, "Hey, we heard about a riot calling." Blacker tries to run off like, "Hang on, I got a snowball." Boom! What was in that snowball? Well, Scrooge just broke the first rule of snowball fights and dirt clod wars if you watch Recess. That was a rock. Not just any rock. The rock that dreams are made of. The goose egg nugget. Oh, love it. Love it. So at the end of it all, they get the money back to the bin, and the boys are super excited. "That was so amazing. That was cool. All right, what's you gonna do next? All right." She was like, "Not anymore. No, lads. And I'm a fossil of a bygone age, when a man could live on his own terms, be an individual." And they're like, "Well, maybe too much of an individual, but we'll be your family now." Scrooge looks at him like, it's too late. That's the one experience I've never had. Yet there was a time when I almost the story last led to Dawson. I'm thinking of doing a video on the Klondike era for February. I think it's really fun. But anyway. I mean, like, but you thrive on new experiences. Just look at the life you've led. It's like, that but life was a doozy. But it's behind me now. All I have left is endless days of boredom in that gloomy mansion. And he walks off, defeated. Not into the sunset, more into the darkness, to just sort of be consumed by it all. And then, like, it's such a shame he threw his life away on adventures. That they were all just wasted effort and pointless. Whatever he achieved will sooner or later fade away and fall into ruin like he did. And that's when the boys get what they got to do. All right, they got to push the old man. He's like, "You know what? He never fit in the modern world anyway. There are no adventures left, no mysteries. Otherwise, and it's good for us. Otherwise, we tend to waste our lives looking for them. We'd end up worn up antiques like him." She was like, antiques. Age is not a matter of body, but of brain. Great men stayed active well into the 90s. They stayed young because they still had visions to follow. And he becomes a critique of the entire generation before that, of the entire generation after Scrooge. All right, empty-headed youngsters be ashamed. The quality of their lives depends on what they make of them. Like, and what are you doing? You're doing nothing. All right, you're just lollygagging around, right? Enjoying. What is Donald a boomer? Like, the generation gap might, yeah, the generation gap might be there. But anyway. So he's like, if I was half the duck I once was, I'd show you an adventure. They point out that duck had trouble licking 4 beagle boys. You soloed 8. And like, I will lick a dozen if I have to. I didn't build this empire just to go, just so those mass mutt boys can cart it off piecemeal. Is that a slur? Is mutt boy a slur in this world? I don't know. They say, but everybody knows about your money. But like, I don't care. Any loafers, miscreants who thinks they can get their fingers on my money will tangle with Scrooge. Look at that fire. Look at that fire. Look at that drive. All right. Donald's like, you just got this old man agitated. And she was like, you know what? There was someone who agitated me some time ago, and he gets his get back. Look at that. Look at that foam. Look at that drive. Look at that perfect. And I'm like, you know what? I almost felt like me again. Like, don't mention it. So now he's having like, you know what? I feel like rejuvenated. I'll reopen this office and get back to work. Actually, real quick. Scrooge has a world empire spanning not just one industry, but hundreds of industries, like lumber, automobiles, oil. So I'm willing to bet furniture making, um, railroads, newspapers, boats, presumably cosmetics, a whole bunch of other stuff. So when he just stopped, like he shut down his entire empire, what happened to the economy? That's like a whole bunch of people all over the world lost their jobs. I don't, but anyway. It's like, you know what? You boys have inspired me to follow my visions again. I'll reward you for taking your time. Time is like, I've got 20 good years of work left in me. My greatest adventures have yet to become. He's like, I'm so happy. Like, you know what? I gotta do this. I gotta do this. He goes in, he dives into his money, he swims, and he is so happy. It's like, okay, so what do you think we'll do next? Like, I'll probably go somewhere to find some old ledger or something. It's who knows? Who cares? Donald doesn't believe his life, Scrooge's life is interesting. Like, you know what? All this money, he doesn't do anything with it. He doesn't spend it. What's the point of it? All right, all he has is a life of cold, meaningless metal. And the boy's like, we don't know, Uncle Scrooge. You might be wrong. And that's how the comic begins with the lines, and as usual, he was. As Scrooge is now left in his money, just basking in his memories, in his life, in his experiences, all of it. And so, yeah, that is part 12. So let's go with a little bit of lore here. A little bit of lore. A little bit of lore. Not too much lore here because this is the end of it. This is, of course, a sort of middle story to Christmas on Bear Mountain, which is Scrooge's first comic book debut. I think his first debut period, if I'm not mistaken. That Scrooge is so different from pretty much any iteration that came afterward for a good while because Scrooge hadn't really been defined. That's a Donald Duck story. Scrooge won't have his own story until later in Only a Poor Old Man. Even Scrooge's wealth is not properly defined until that story. At that point, Scrooge's like, well, I'm a wealthy man from a good family. Well, it used to be a good family. The rules hadn't been written yet. And as a like the one critique I have about Barks is that man did not care for continuity. He did not. He's like, look, whatever story I want to tell, that's the continuity that exists. All right. I don't care if Castle McDuck existed. All right. Before, as a fully formed castle still there. When I want to do Hound of the Whiskervilles, that castle's in ruins. How much time has passed? Not enough for that castle to be in ruins. And all of a sudden, Scrooge doesn't know what a McDuck tartan looks like because he's never seen one. Yeah, it doesn't matter if he's lived in Scotland his whole life until he was like 13. Yeah. It doesn't matter. He wouldn't know. Christmas on Bear Mountain is a fun story, and I think that might be something we do for Christmas. I've actually got something else planned, but I think it's important we go over that too as well. Of course, the scene from Christmas on Bear Mountain is repeated by Scrooge in D17 DuckTales, Last Crash, The Sun Chaser, effectively saying, "Hey, Scrooge is a bitter old man," and I don't think that's a fair observation, but then again, D17 is more about the idea that Scrooge is totally happy to be alone, and just not doing anything. All right, primarily because he's not over, the loss of Della and how much that hurt him. And so everyone thinks he's a just crotchety old man who doesn't care about anything. That's fine. He becomes a recluse. He retires from adventuring, and that's something that I don't think that I think D17 kind of did is that he does miss the adventures, but the problem is that the motivations are actually kind of similar. the further you go down into Rose's other works on Scrooge, you do sort of see that the family aspect was important. But here it is sort of centered around the loss of Della. But he's just sort of going through the motions there, as opposed to just outright retiring. And I think different mileage comes from that one, but that's up to you. Um, and of course, the 87 DuckTales Don't Give Up the Ship is when the boys, Huey and Louie, go to live with Scrooge, and there's not much to that that can be tied into this one. Scrooge is already willing to go on adventures. He's just not sure what he wants to do with the boys. And even Rosa has pointed out, and other Barks and Rosa fans point out, yeah, Scrooge would not take the nephews in. And I'm thinking he would if there was no other place for them to go. Like, in a greater Duck universe, there's no reason they couldn't live with Grandma Duck. No reason I couldn't. But Don't Give Up the Ship is more fun than anything. It's not. It's a good setup, good introduction to DuckTales, but it doesn't really tie that well into the greater Duck lore. Then again, this does really too. D17 has a lot of visual cues to Barks' stuff, and even some of Rose's, but little else. As my first introduction to Rose's work, I would say this was wild. It was wild, but there is something I really want to talk about. I really want to talk about. I really want to talk about because I'm nerding out here. Okay, so hang on. Let me. This scene here is Scrooge sort of sitting in the mansion. This sort of gloomy, dark mansion. Everything is dark. His memory here is violent. All right, it's something. Drop that knife soap around. We don't know when this altercation happened, as far as I know. So, but we see exactly who he is. Well, sort of where he is in his headspace. All right, and of course, there's the scene of the introduction, and we see how old and withered Scrooge looks. Like he does not look anything like we would expect him to look. And then we go to the end. This here is just all of these happy memories. Scrooge is happy. He looks more rejuvenated here. He looks more alive. All right. The building is, even the money bin looks brighter now as all of these happy memories are here. Not a single bad memory is up here. Nothing here is overly violent, it's overly dark, it's overly cynical. It's not against someone who doesn't even dislike. It's just like, hey, these are the highs. These were the best moments of my life. And I lived a really great one. Scrooge, no. And in the money, as Scrooge says, this is a part of my money that I never spent. This is what makes him rich, is that fact he's lived such a great life, and he can just, not only do what he likes, but doing what he likes helps him remember all the good times. Right? And even some of the bad. Sure, like we got him arriving, the Highland Games that he did terribly at. The first time he got the number one dime, his time on the riverboat, his time as a cowboy, learned to be a prospector, the time he soloed Africa, the time he did a 1v1 with Teddy Roosevelt, Glitter and Goldie, his boring time in Australia. That time he he did the 1v1 against Whiskervilles. Oh, that was great. His time the Klondike, which arguably when he was his happiest. All of it's there. It's so good. Oh, I remember seeing this page for the first time. Like, what are all these? What is all this? Like, I heard a little bit of it from the 87 DuckTales, like so little of it. But 87 DuckTales doesn't scratch the surface the way Rosa did. Rosa went in and said, "These are all a bunch of random dates that Barks came up with. I can make a story out of all this." To the library, Gunther. And that was it. Oh, this was so good. It was so nice to come back to the story again after all this time and do this series, and I do love that. That was sort of like the best part about this, was being able to go back here and talk to with some of you guys. It was great. It was great. And I am working on another talk with someone else. But we'll go more into that when that happens. So anyway, with that in mind, this brings to a close. If you're new to the Bucket Think Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, smash the thumbs up button. I'll catch you all later. This is Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.